Okay, my name is Gina Dominique, and this is Sophie Lorange. We are abstract painters from cohort 2021, just finishing our 4th year. I just submitted my first draft dissertation. And it is about 5 of 25 or so drafts printed and stacked. I didn't print every month, but apparently about every 5 months. I've been writing for the last 2 years. And the piece overall is titled The Everything Tree. And it's the first painting I've done in these 25 months. I painted for 2 years. I tend to be a prolific painter, make a lot of work at the same time, whether that's over like 5 months or 5 or 15 years. I work on a larger body of work, so it's more unusual for me to make a one-off. And my idea with the piece, it's on my drop cloth, because the curatorial call or the call for the show, the curatorial statement, is about process work, and so somehow I landed on, I think I'll use half of my drop cloth. It has all kinds of markings from the 60 or 70 pieces that I did in that 2-year period. And then I cut it in half. It was 2 pieces like this, sort of stitched together. I cut it in half and I took it outside. The underpainting is of a tree in my front yard, which you might look at in that first photocopy or print. I painted out there for a couple of days in like 95-degree weather. And then I took it into my studio. I wasn't 100% clear. I thought I would do very gestural, abstract kind of graffiti-like mark making, which I often do to finish a work. But this red AI image came up on my screen. It's a screensaver, and I was looking up a Joan Mitchell painting called Red Painting, and I got links to research it, but I also got this AI-generated red tree, which made me giggle at the time. I thought, I have to save that image. And so one section of it, I thought, this is like a perfect fit. And I use this pink in a lot of my work for many years, since I was, 18 and just starting to paint. I associate it with baby dolls and other things from my childhood. Anyway, I think of it as like a kind of quantum field AI tree over this plein air sort of maybe British landscape painted tree. I think of, Constable and Turner and David Hockney even, and his like big new groovy work. Anyway, Sophie will talk about her piece for a minute, and then we'll sit and we'll read. We'll read a couple of paragraphs in a kind of dialogue. It's very raw because we thought we'd have a couple of days to sort of rehearse and refine, but you'll get the raw version.
Yes, so just, this is, the title is Tracing Soul Nostalgia, which means feeling of homesickness while still being at home. It's a term coined by philosopher Glenn Albrecht, and the piece is an extended painting, which implies that I use, for instance, driftwood and stones, and I extend the painting beyond the canvas. And the driftwood and stone are collected from a childhood area in the south coast of Norway, where I travel every summer since I was a child, and I create outdoor painting installations, extended paintings outdoor. And the small drawings are also created out by the sea there, and we will discuss more through our notes and dialogue between us. So you can just start, Gina.
Okay. We have always, by the way, thought since we met, or before we met, we might have seen each other's work, and we thought there was always a connection. So this is the first time that we're actually more intentionally dialoguing.
Yeah.
So I'll read from chapter 1, Literature Review, Abstract Lineages, Rewritten. The feminist art movement in the West emerged in the late 1960s amidst the fervor of American anti-war demonstrations and burgeoning gender, civil, and queer rights movements around the world. Harkening back to the utopian ideals of the early 20th century modernist movements, feminist artists sought to rewrite a falsely male-dominated art history, change the contemporary world around them through their art, intervene in the established art world, and challenge the existing art canon. Feminist art created opportunities and space that previously did not exist for women and minority artists, as well as paved the path for identity and activist art genres of the 1980s. Situating feminist art within this trajectory, I explore how contemporary female and non-gendered artists, particularly those working in abstraction, navigate and challenge gendered expectations in art history. Their work, informed by the evolving discourse of feminism, continues to question hierarchies of value and visibility, resisting containment within rigidly defined theoretical frameworks. To further contextualize my research, I draw on feminist art historian Linda Nochlund's groundbreaking 1971 Art News essay, Why have there been no great women artists? Haha, that was mine. In her seminal text, Nochlund critically interrogated the system barriers that have historically marginalized women in the art world. Rather than attributing the lack of recognized female artists to innate biological differences, she exposed a deeply entrenched institutional structures that have privileged white middle-class men.
This research is founded on a visual process of painting expanding, dismantling ontological boundaries of painting. An example of the process of painting expanding is the spatial shift within an inside and outside space of creation. The knowledge of the spatial shifting between a traditional understanding of what constitutes a painting, such as formal spatial boundaries of typically two-dimensional spaces created with pigment on surface, to expanding and using pigment or color in relation to three-dimensional spaces, has been a continually developing process throughout the creative practice of the thesis. Another example of the process of painting expanding is the use of the body in connection to painting, going beyond painting on canvas and using the entire body in the process of painting. The thesis investigates the intricate relationship between the bodily experience and embodied memories of space I inhabit through the process of painting. The research critically examines the impact of nature, particularly the experience of being in a space of change due to the climate, and how reconstructed memories influence my physical presence, emotions, and sense of belonging in the context of this change. This work seeks to encourage a reflective dialogue around a relationship with space, memory, and climate change, thereby fostering a deeper understanding of these vital inner connections. The motivation behind the research into expanded painting stems from a profound bodily sensation of breaking free from my own limitations, transcending trauma and climate anxiety through the act of being fully present in the moment. The motivation also stems from not being able to articulate the feelings I have of the environmental change challenges I confront today on a personal embodied level. This journey has led me to slow down, embrace play, and utilize the body as a creative tool, which continually fuels an attention to expanding the physical and conceptual bodies in the work. I have, through this process, managed to develop a vocabulary where I can connect my feelings beyond spoken language.
This next section is Chapter 1, Section 1, Relevant, Historical, and Current Research, Gendered Abstraction. The systemic exclusion of women from abstraction and the art historical discourse has long been entrenched in institutional narratives, giving the misperception of who key figures within the movement were. Olivia McEwen focused on this in her 2023 hyperallergic piece, A Woman's History of Global Abstraction. In it, she examines how major exhibitions continue to reinforce a male-dominated canon. She points to the Royal Academy's 2016-17 Abstract Expressionism show, which centered on the usually praised male ab-ex painters Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, Clifford Still, and Willem de Kooning, artists who have long been upheld as the pillars of the movement. McEwen, 2023. In contrast, McEwen also references the Whitechapel Gallery's 2023 Action, Gesture, Paint, Women Artists in Global Abstraction 1940 through 70 exhibition, which deliberately reframes this narrative, presenting 150 works by 80 women abstractionists. This show served as both a corrective and a challenge to the conventional understanding of abstract expressionism, which has historically privileged white male American painters and almost entirely overlooked the global contributions of women. McEwen highlights how the show's curatorial approach, with an advisory board and contribution from feminist art historian Griselda Pollock, underscored the scale of the historical omissions it sought to address. For instance, the exhibition labels included references to the barriers faced by women artists, such as Martha Eidelheit's Reflection. It didn't really occur to me that I could be an artist. All the artists in the museums were men. McEwen, 2023.
By recognizing that my embodied experiences are interwoven through familial ties rather than confined by strict criteria, I embraced a more nuanced understanding of language and meaning related to belongingness and healing trauma. The approach to language underscored the flexibility of language, where Wittgenstein's concept of family resemblances allowed me to adopt a more open approach to painting as an extended spatial presence connecting to the notion of belonging beyond distinct categorizations. Ultimately, this realization invited me to perceive painting as a medium that extends into philosophical dimensions of everyday life and understanding the physical presence of a healing process as an embodied presence within the creative practice itself. By accelerating the physical body, honoring the importance of slowing down, to stay with things, one cultivates a heightened awareness of both internal and external landscapes, leading to a deeper connection with oneself and one's surrounding. An example is my returning creating painting installations and drawings at the same landscape along the south coast of Norway again and again. And through this process of returning, sitting with the world, and slowing down my pace, I'm able to engage with the landscape anew. This practice invites an exploration of how mindful engagement with art can foster a sense of belonging that is not only personal, but also communal, bridging the distance between myself and the ecological context in which I reside, honoring the rhythms of deepful and mindful thought that is a counteract to the technological, speed-driven nature of modern contemporary digitalized life. In relation to today's technological world, I believe our ways of being in the world, such as sitting with things over time, a non-utilitarian way of being patient, quietly listening into the surrounding landscape outside and stopping up, pausing to reflect and contemplate without a commodified meaning other than just being present in the moment is more and more threatened by the daily digitalization. Slow engagement and being present reminds us of the love and wisdom of nature, and of grasping something that is outside ourselves, a dwelling with the world. I use the word dwelling as a philosophical attitude of staying with things, relating to philosopher Heidegger's writings on dwelling, and Lucer's writings of attempting ways of listening to the repression of philosophy. They both stress an attentiveness of being attentive and open to what unfolds, of slowing down as a way of being in the world. She states, we need to proceed in such a way that linear reading is no longer possible.
1.2, gaps in abstraction, feminist, queer, and ethnic lineages. Two gaps are particularly central to my research. The first being the gender gap, which was exemplified by late 20th century art historical frameworks that tended to isolate the pattern and decoration movement of the 1970s, framing feminist painting as decorative, marginal, and historically anomalous. This marginalization persists in dominant readings of abstraction. As Alina Cohen notes in her 2019 Artsy editorial, while artistic lineages are arbitrary and influence itself is a nebulous concept, it's impossible to say definitively exactly which ideas and experiences weave their way into anyone's work. We're long overdue for a canon-challenging exhibition that unites feminist and neo-expressionist painting from the 1970s and 80s, placing these art historical contributions in dialogue with one another. Cohen, 2018. Cohen's assertion resonates with my own call for a reframing of abstraction that situates feminist contributions as integral rather than tangential to the development of the genre. Contemporary interest in Hilma F. Klint's work underscores the need to reassess the very foundations of abstraction. Rather than treat F. Klint and the Five as isolated visionaries, we must understand their contribution as indicative of a broader, long-silenced narrative of women and queer artists whose work in abstraction predated and paralleled their more widely recognized male counterparts. My dissertation suggests that the implications of this revision are profound. If F. Klint's presence demands reordering abstraction's origin story, then contemporary art history must rethink abstraction as a site of feminist and queer expression from its inception.
Background. Growing up in the US and later moving to Norway as a teenager, I developed a natural connection to the Norwegian rural landscape through play. I believe this way of focusing on the world around me and being present. I believe this was a way of focusing on the world around me and being present. This moving transition placed me in a liminal space between two cultures, where nature served as a refuge from feelings of cultural disconnection and became an opening of a pathway into a transformative lived experience. While navigating both Norwegian and English, linguistic expression often merged elements of each language as I was searching for the correct words. It felt like I was missing a part of me in each culture and linguistic family, grappling with questions of belongingness after experiencing a near-death accident. A profound relationship with nature developed through a sense of immediacy and freedom through play, allowing me to exist authentically in the present moment. The near-death experience I encountered in the US intensified a profound desire for connection with the outdoors and a sense of freedom. I found a sanctuary where I felt at home and at peace. Yet this tranquility was often shadowed by a creeping sense of eco-anxiety regarding the potential loss of that belonging. This nostalgic yearning to grasp each fleeting season prompted my engagement with painting as a vital means of forging a connection with the landscape. The act of painting became an anchor, providing me with a sense of stability around the concept of home and the idea of holding on to what is ephemeral. In this context, the nostalgic desire intertwined with fluctuations of seasons and the weight of eco-anxiety began to transform into a new vocabulary, one rooted in the act of painting itself. It was as if my physical body and its connection to nature became the foundational anchoring points for this vocabulary. The artistic practice evolved to blend indoor and outdoor environments, allowing the painting process to incorporate found elements from nature. This approach not only facilitated the creation of abstract expressions reflecting personal experiences through installations, but it also led to the development of an expanded painting practice. Here the works transcended traditional canvas limitations, emphasizing a merging of spaces.
Chapter 1, Section 3, Theoretical and Methodological Foundations of Auto-Abstraction. In my praxis works, I use a combination of art historically documented abstract painting methods, including early, mid, and late 20th century abstract painting techniques. Like all or most abstract painters, I am inescapably influenced by spiritualist painting, especially by the first known modern abstract painters, again, the five, led by Hilma F. Klint, and including Anna Cassell, Cornelia Cederberg, Sigrid Hedman, and Matilda Nielsen. Af. Klint's use of geometry, abstract figuration, symbolism, language, scientific research, and spiritualist techniques like automatic writing were essentially her route to abstraction. As the first Western modernist abstract painter, in the broadest artistic and art historical terms, Af. Klint's work is regarded as significant. She established the genre of abstraction. Af. Klint also studied organic forms like shells, plants, and flowers, which bears out in the more fluid aspects of her work, in her use of color, and again, as well as within what became a dominant subgenre of 20th century abstract painting, and what we now broadly refer to as lyrical abstraction. During the mid-20th century, it was redefined by gesture painters like Arshile Gorky, Willem de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, Lee Krasner, Elaine de Kooning, Pearl Fine, and other 1940s New York School painters. All their works also influenced my development as a painter. I think this can be seen in most of my current praxis paintings, which contain gestural and/or painterly techniques, often referencing nature.
In this part of the artistic research, I've immersed myself in painting solely with the color blue over a period of time. I realized that the difference between painting blue paintings and painting installations with the color blue is the different ways in which color relates to me emotionally in different contexts, and also how the space and form of the painting becoming a three-dimensional installation changes the way I emotionally connect to the color itself. This color can be woven into the fabric of the canvas or smoothed onto the stone, and both consist of a mix of bodily memories, emotions, and histories of both healing and trauma that are deeply intertwined with my relationship with the natural world. Yet the memories and stories and sensations often feel nebulous, evading precise expression through language. An example of this is a childhood memory from the aftermath of the near-death experience. As I was healing and my face was heavily scarred, I remember repeating a sentence to myself. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. The other children at school would ask me about my face, and the comments would often be hurtful. They were not bullying me, but simply curious of what happened to me. However, it made me feel ugly, and I remember I learned to repeat this sentence to myself as a way of coping this feeling of not fitting in. Not so strangely, I only use driftwood and stones in all my outdoor installations today. I understand that this intuitive choice may also be connected to a childhood memory. I connect color to the driftwood and stones as a way of activating these memories and becoming present in the moment. I wanted to connect paintings to this feeling of longing when one is separated from something, a place or someone we desire. A childhood memory that altered my sense of place was after the near-death experience, and I had to stay indoors in the first healing period after getting back from the hospital. I remember I looked out at the nature outside, and even though I was so close, it felt so distant. I knew I soon would be outside again, but at the moment I felt the blue of distance. I felt the color that escapes you, something so familiar and close and far away. Today, I have a similar feeling towards the climate change. The changing nature, diminishing remind me of the beauty and melancholy of distance of the color that escapes one, and the human desire for connection in a world that often feels vast and unknowable at times.
Chapter 1, Section 4, Main Theoretical Argument, Auto Theory in Practice. The elevated, overarching theoretical position of my creative practice-based research is auto theory. I use auto theory as first described in Paul B. Presidio's 2013 Testo Junkie, Sex, Drugs, and Biopolitics in the Pharmacopornographic Era, and Maggie Nelson's 2015 The Argonauts. Auto-theoretical methods blend personal experiences with research and theoretical analysis. I employ more particularly the auto-theoretical methods as contemporary artist-theorist Lauren Fournier described in her book, Auto Theory as Feminist Practice in Writing, Art, and Criticism. Fournier states that auto theory is directly traceable to 20th century feminist writings, art history as methodology, art practices, and art activism. In her essay, Auto Theory as Rebellion, on research, embodiment, and imagination in creative nonfiction, Adrienne Zwartes states, I have been thinking about fact and truth and ways of knowing what we know. She goes on to describe her thoughts on blending nonfiction with personal writing and the balance between research and imagination. She advocates for reading and writing work that mixes research and theory with personal narrative, to mix what is real with the fragmentary lyric, Zwartes, 2021. Zwartes goes on to quote Sarah Menkadick. There has long been an assumed dichotomy between research-driven and personal writing, with the former construed as rigorous and intellectual and male, and the latter frivolous and easy and female. She makes the case that historical gender biases tend to add pressure on non-males whose writings have been negatively categorized as memoir, so tend to be disregarded. To write more seriously by wielding research as scientific, intellectual, professional tool. Zwartes, 2021.
Wandering in nature, the sea. The found objects, the driftwood and stones, I'm always bringing with me and caring for, is a way of bringing some kind of permanence with me, or having some kind of root. This grounds me so that I know that I'm moving closer or farther away. As long as this comes with me, that is the stability, and I care of it. Bringing it with me is a way of grounding myself, because I cannot control the motion or the movement. This has taken me several years to figure out, as it has been an unconscious act, but gradually, as I have reflected the process, I'm figuring out why I'm creating and what I am creating. It is a balancing act between my unconscious and conscious state of being and the inner need to care. I think also it is about reconnecting with others, humans and non-humans, and to nature before it gets lost. The process of wandering is a sensory and affective investigation of a spatial relationship with the landscape. Repeating the same act of wandering each year along the Norwegian childhood area shoreline creates both unconscious and conscious patterns when wandering. The patterns form a stability and rhythm through the flow of movement. For instance, when walking, there is an emotional and psychological effect of walking at the same place every year since childhood, and understanding develops of space as an experience that influences my notion of belongingness and identity. It becomes a personal and reflective experience, deepening the connection between myself and the landscape. It activates modes of participation that is situated and relational. A sensory inquiry of place, a clearing of mind, where rhythm and embodiment takes place as both pace and tempo plays a role. Slow movements are equally important in the process as well as faster paces. The walk can be visible in motion, but inwardly still, and vice versa. This is an invisible movement within the visible walking. The outdoor painting installations and drawings are a part of this movement. Creating and wandering are interchangeable. The distance is experience is not about the measured miles, but about the atmospheric distance of the wandering and the experience in the creative process. This atmospheric distance or movement develops through time, such as through the act of repetition, patterns, and rhythm. Carrying out the same stones and driftwoods each summer and placing them outside by the sea is a sort of repetition of a gestural act of appreciation and awe towards the sea each year. It is also an act in understanding belongingness within the natural landscape. The natural landscape does not confine the artwork to the space, but rather becomes a part of it. It is the presence in itself and the sense of being here and now where the art exists. It not only exists, but becomes an active participant with the natural environment. When creating these extended paintings, such as the painting installations, there exists a blurring of boundaries by converging the act of painting with other media, such as installation art and photography. And this in turn further breaks down established modes and strict definitions when discussing the act of painting. The driftwood and stones become the painting, as well as the stony landscape behind that interacts with the painting, similar to a canvas. The presence of color functions as lines and structure in a composition pointing in different directions, occupying the space and transforming it to sensuous experience. However, when engaging with color, it becomes elusive when one attempts to articulate it.
Chapter 1, Section 5, a fitting resolution, painting as solution. A fitting resolution to my research is to paint, engaging directly with materiality and process, to employ not a theoretical approach to analyze my paintings, and within this thesis to deliberate on the project as a whole. Auto theory, with its inherent flexibility, enables me to draw from multiple analytic frameworks, including art history, feminism, autobiography, autoethnography, post-structuralism, deconstruction, and psychoanalysis. It also allows me to engage with the works of a broad spectrum of material, from queer modernist painters to phenomenologists, feminist aesthetics philosophers, feminist-based theorists, feminist art historians, feminist critics and art writers, and contemporary queer post-feminist painters. The tensions between connection and alienation, and between expansion and introspection, are particularly relevant to my own practice. Like Af Clint, I seek to engage with abstraction, not as a retreat from discourse, but as a means of accessing deeper, often ineffable layers of meaning. Through auto theory, I bridge the personal with the theoretical and the philosophical, and I integrate feminist epistemologies within the embodied act of painting. In doing so, my research contributes to ongoing feminist interventions in art practices, art histories, art methodologies, and feminist aesthetics. And it also reconsiders abstraction as a space of inquiry, resistance, and revelation.
In the creative process, I push the boundaries of the medium through intuitive experimentation with materials, techniques, and forms, and through the shifting of place between outside and inside. The extended painting practice offers a visual language through which I can communicate my own personal sensing of belongingness to nature in relation to the changing environment through what I define as emotional landscapes. I invite viewers to engage with the visceral and emotional impact of belongingness and environmental change through a personal narrative, creating hybrid forms that challenge traditional categories. That's it.
So I'll entertain questions, comments.
I'm curious about the scale of the photographs and how that scale of the actual objects plays into the installations you make.
Can you repeat that?
I'm interested in the scale of,
the scale
of the driftwood and
yeah.
how that scale informs the installations that you
Yes.
make.
Yeah, that's interesting. The scale is important, well, when I'm out in nature, it's the physical aspect of the driftwood and the stones and what I collect is very important. And when I vary between scale, as you see in this photo, this is quite large. It's almost the height of my body, so I can sit underneath. So it becomes a physical presence in the sense that it can relate to a sort of home or what we use when we play with huts as small children when we build. Often I find smaller pieces of wood. But each are important in each their way, but I like to vary between scale because it has an impact on how I relate to the formations along the Stony Coast. And and each of these installations, they just stand there until they blow down, and then I pick them up after the summer and I bring them inside.
Oh.
I take care of them and I take them out again.
So you recycle, like you'll do another installation with
Yeah, I bring them out
different
every year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely want to connect with both of y'all more because there's so many intersections. So we have lots to talk about. But I'm also curious about like the walks. Do you like do any kind of like documentation of that, or is it like the walk itself is the practice?
It's interesting that you asked because it's both.
Yeah.
I do also documentation of it. I had for the last year I've been walking daily, for instance, in the forest outside of Oslo, and I've been drawing daily small drawings, and with another artist in Belgium, and she's been doing the same in her landscape, and we've been exchanging drawings through between us. And the most important aspect of it is just when I'm wandering or walking, being present here and now, and the process of drawing sort of becomes one with the presence of being in nature, and that's I think that is something that has arisen through being there daily, through repeating, through coming every year to the same area, for instance, in the South Coast, and just being very truly present in the moment, and that's how that walking process continues, wandering process. Yeah.
Britta.
So Gina, you mentioned that this painting is very anomalous for you. I'm curious.
Well, compared to the first couple of years of my
Yeah,
life.
so I'm just curious if you could speak more to sort of the meaning behind it and what led you to this different path.
I typically paint in my studio, and for years prior to the pandemic, that was in the middle of Manhattan, which is, you get a little it's very easy to lose sight of nature. And be completely caught up in academics. You know, I'm an academic, you know, in art history and methodology. Meanwhile, my summer studio for, I don't know, 14 years, long time, is upstate in the Catskills, first in Woodstock, and maybe 10 or 11 years ago, we sold and moved further into the Catskills, near a reservoir in a town called Olive. Okay, well, I am immersed in nature in that studio. Like, the windows are high up, but I'm always aware of changing light, of the trees in the Catskills, and I'm always thinking of nature somehow, quite, you know, in stark contrast to my New York City studio, which is no more. So the whole time, those 2 years that I was immersed in producing my praxis works, it shows up again and again and again, but I'm always thinking like, oh, I should be dragging these canvases outside, which I didn't. Yeah, until now. I don't, you know, why did I do it now when it's 95 degrees? It just had to be done. What's that?
So you did that one outside?
This one I did, yeah. You'll see this like early version, which is maybe the third round. This is again like half of the drop cloth that was on my studio floor for that 2-year period, and maybe even one series before that. And so there are like, you know, rectangular marks from the canvases, all of which are smaller than this. Maybe I have one tall one that's about 12 feet, but that's on 3 stretched and then conjoined canvases or linens. So those are quite formal, and I don't know, on linen, right? This is like, I guess because in part I'm picking it up off the floor. I had a big linen unstretched, but it was, you know, it's, I don't know, 15 or 18 feet long and 7 feet high, and I'm thinking like, no flippin' way in 1 week am I handling that. So I go to the drop cloth, and there is this, like, I'm sitting on this, I'm happy to walk on this painting. This was not my approach with my praxis work. Is that fair? Yeah.
So I was wondering, when did you do those little like drawings or gouaches or
The inks?
Yeah, did you do it like on the spot or did
Yes,
you do it?
I did. Yeah, so they're all from the childhood area and the south coast of Norway. So They're small meditations.
Like in, when, did you say when?
No,
Where?
When?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it's important to me that when I'm drawing and painting, that it doesn't become, I'm very focused on the intuitive approach,
Mm-hmm.
and that I let the consciousness of the act of drawing be important in the sense, because if I stop that, I know that I'll lose something when I'm creating, and so it sort of comes through if I just stay present in where I am.
This is not at all a gotcha question.
Okay,
No.
this is not a trick question.
No,
Now we're
no.
playing for a trick question.
No, but it's one I'm really curious about
Yeah.
because there's a shift I've noticed with both of you. And it's really interesting to hear you sort of self-identify as abstract painters, both of you.
We do.
And yet, I'm really conscious of, like, in this new work,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's something else going on. And
Yeah.
also, again, over the years, you and I have worked together, you know, when you know, in your MFA, and you 100% very, very much paint, shape, colour, form. And it's this journey of the body, you becoming more present in the work, the history becoming more present, the location becoming more present, and the world becoming so much more. Certainly, you know, the figures here, the places of so much of this work, and the fact that you're making some quite abstract forms, but very much in nature.
Yeah.
And this is the not gotcha part, which is, it feels like you've both gone on a journey
Yeah.
from abstraction, and I understand
No,
the desire
that's
to
fair,
kind
Michael.
of,
That is fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
but you kind of, I'm just curious for both of you, it feels like you're starting to sort of transcend those art historical categories
Yeah.
in new and interesting ways,
Good.
and
Also not a trick.
no, but also, I'm just curious as to how you might sort of reference that journey in your theses and in the way you go forward from this point in terms of we just painters, or does it need a label, or does it has its roots in abstraction, that is abstraction coming back towards the world, or is abstraction in counterpoint to representation? Or, I don't know. It feels like you're at a really where the words are starting to not matter less, but to sort of not need replacing, but to sort of start to shift. And there's something the practice is doing more than the words can cover.
Yeah, I would. Well, remember, we're also picking segments
Absolutely.
of sections.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
I
think
tried
for
to
you,
cover it. I tried to
Yours-
cover it with
yeah.
like Clint and the 5 referencing nature. And then that happens again with the Ab-X painters, abstract expressionist painters like Mitchell, who I don't mention in this section, but I write not a fair amount, but I reference her and red painting, her show, her influence on me. So I mean, like throughout the whole whatever 196 pages, well, there are these threads that end up braiding together, and one of those threads, you know, as you're astutely pointing out and articulating, is that look, is a distraction really like this, you know, unrelated to everything that we know? And I guess, you know, what I'm thinking of in this particular work is this AI generated image. Like, I could not have made this when I was learning to paint in the 80s, you know, or I did about a decade stint as an installation artist and printmaker in the 90s. I came back to painting in the early 2000s. So for the last 2+ decades, I've been focused on so-called pure abstraction. What is that?
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Also, I think what you're saying is also related to my work in the sense that I say expanded painting, and you're
Yeah.
thinking, what's that? Well, painting is sort of the umbrella, and the expanded is photography, installation. The umbrella's edges are touching all these different mediums. And so what is abstraction? I think it's something that today is not necessarily, you don't need a label on it. I think you can write a thesis on that. You don't have to label abstraction as you did before, because I think today's contemporary artists are actually blurring the lines between the different mediums, and I think also that one can question, what is abstraction? Is it what it was meant before, or is it something that's transforming? And also, for instance, what you say is that when I'm working, I'm becoming more and more situated to the place, yet the paintings are abstract, but what is abstract and what is situated? So it's sort of the articulation of abstraction is something one can discuss, because it's actually a transforming.
Also, we both talk about it in the context of our writing as
Yeah.
liminal space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
To really exist in that kind of both worlds, in between worlds.
Blurred boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I really love and identify with vertical practice.
Yeah.
That's a construct for myself.
Yes.
I want to come back to that thing you said about pure abstraction, because I think
Yeah.
there's something really interesting there.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the pure abstraction is that, for me, that's a really male 1950s
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
worship at the moment as pure abstraction,
Yeah.
like marvels for that or whatever. But actually, I wonder if there's almost like this sort of being part of this sort of very feminist sort of tradition of abstraction.
Yeah.
Part of it, that's actually turning back towards embracing that abstract thing with a capital A, but turning it back towards the world. And having
Yeah,
that sort
and
of
nature,
balance.
and
Yeah.
well, I mentioned it in maybe one of the sections I read. We acknowledge Af Clinton, the Five,
Yes.
and some other early abstractionists. In fact, a handful at least throughout the 20th century as being spiritualist. This is a genre, spiritualist
Yeah.
abstraction. It really grows out of that first movement, and even if we reframe or re-examine Pollock and any other of the, giants of the mid-20th century abstract movement who are so-called pure abstractionists, really those so-called process painters talk about their own work, understand their own work as spiritualist in nature, right? And they draw from the universe, kind of cosmology. Yeah, so.
Same for men as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Really, I think Laurie, like,
Yeah, I hate to cut this conversation, but we have run out of time.